Okay, cool. So first and foremost, I just want to say thank you to all of you guys for coming out today. This is our first official event of the year for the Armenian Pre-Health Society. So thank you all for
Oh, wow.
making it. Big thank you to Michael as well for willing to speak to us today. And Michael, you have the floor.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Just for people who aren't aware of who I am and what I'm doing here, no worries, Nair. I graduated from UCLA in 2019. I applied to medical school straight through from college. I was lucky enough to be able to stay here at UCLA. So I'm at my apartment in Sawtell. So I'm staying here for medical school, and I'll be graduating in class of 2023. A big part of my application for medical school was mentorship. And I'm not sure if you guys saw in the chat, but being a PLF was a big thing in my life. I'm not sure if everyone is aware of PLF program, but I was a PLF supervisor for the life sciences in the academic advancement program. And one of my students, Jane, is here today. I'm glad that I got a chance to see her again. But that is kind of context as to why I'm here, because that mentorship kind of thread in my life is continuing to this day. I remember still what it's like to be in your shoes, to be preparing for the MCAT. And I think I know it more intimately than you imagine, right? So 3 months ago, my girlfriend took the MCAT. So it was as if like I was taking it again, going through it with her. And then I am currently studying for step 1, which is the MCAT's like bigger brother. So I am in the trenches with you. I had a long study day today. I'll have another long study day tomorrow. And so I just want to kind of open with the fact that I'm not some guy who has been a physician for 20, 25 years. I'm some guy who's like literally going through something that you're going through right now. So I just want to thank you for coming out, spending your Wednesday nights. I know a lot of us would be rather watching Netflix or anime. It's kind of my thing, but hopefully I can help you guys answer some of the questions or get where you need, because I recognize how stressful admissions is. I'm glad a lot of people are familiar with the PLF program. I'm glad it's still thriving. So I'd like to start with kind of like an interactive introductory session to explore what we already know about the MCAT. And then we can kind of go into Q&A to figure out really like what are your specific questions and what can we really, really answer. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen here. And please, if you're able to, I love seeing faces. It just makes me feel better about who I'm talking to. So turn on your cameras if you can. And then if we are discussing something, feel free to leave your microphone on as well. I do not mind background noise and things like that, just because that's what it's like in the real world. Okay, can you guys see my iPad screen?
It's
no, maybe so.
white screen, but it's there.
Yeah.
Oh.
Can you see it now? Yeah, I can't see you guys anymore. Lost.
Yeah, we can see it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Pardon the handwriting. I'm trying out to be a doctor, so it's part of the job. But anyway, let's start with the MCAT, right? So anyone and everyone, let's have one person go at a time, but what do we know about the MCAT? We'll go, just unmute yourself. Tell me literally the top of mind stuff. Let's kind of build our understanding of this exam so we can figure out what people's kind of knowledge gaps are.
It's really hard.
It's really hard. Yeah, I like that. Okay, why is it hard?
Just a lot of topics that maybe for some people have to learn in like a short amount of time, depending on like when you want to take it.
Great, right? Number of topics, short time to study. Anything else? What are people struggling with?
It's a broad exam.
Broad, yeah, okay, I like that.
The MCAT requires more than just understanding the prior content.
What do you mean by that?
Like it just has like a diverse of subjects like chemistry, biology.
Right, okay, so it's broad. Yeah. It's broad, okay, good.
The MCAT is hard and the MCAT is important.
Where have I heard that from?
Oh my God, it's in that
That's
YouTube.
The ad.
Oh, it's the YouTube ad.
ad.
Oh wait, that's actually
Yes.
so funny. When you said that, I was like, holy cow. How come I recognize that? That's so eerie. And then that's actually so funny. Yeah, I've been getting those ads OD. That's so funny. Okay. Princeton is hard. The MCAT is hard and it's important. Another thing that I kind of want to bring to your attention is that you have a greater sense of competition, right? Because up until this point in your life, you've been, if your classes have been curved, you've been competing with the other people in your class, maybe 300 people. If your classes have not been curved, then you're only competing against the professor, right? In this case now, you're hitting one of the real big standardized curved exams where you're competing with the whole nation, right? So that's another thing that I kind of want to bring up. But yes, the gist is that it's broad and there's a short time of study. And the last thing that I would add is that it's not like your undergraduate exams, right? Is anyone here actively studying for it currently? Yes, no, maybe so. Nope.
Not yet.
So everyone here is planning to study for it.
I think two
Right.
people put thumbs up actually.
Okay, I can't quite see, unfortunately. But okay, well, I'm glad that some people are taking it. The only thing I kind of wanted to bring up is that it doesn't look like Dr. Lavelle's Chem 14A exam. It doesn't look like Dr. Pham's LS7B, or I don't know what he's teaching now, LS7A exams, right? It looks a little bit different. And if we have some time, we can go through like a passage or something to see what it actually looks like. Who here has already taken the exam? No, right? Because then you wouldn't be here. That's important. Okay. So what are the things that you guys are kind of wondering about the exam? Let's go into, let's kind of go broad now. So what questions do you have about the exam?
I think for me, it's more of like, what are the best study tips so that you don't get too overwhelmed and burned off like early on?
Okay, great. So study tips. It sounds like burnout is another thing that you're considering, or that's kind of top of mind for you. What else we got?
People keep saying like you have to learn how to take the test. So just like,
Ooh,
what does that mean?
how to learn to take the test. Okay, great. What else we got?
When is the best time to take the MCAT?
Very good question. When do I even take it? Okay. What else? I want to make sure we're answering your questions. Feel free to put them in the chat as well.
What's a good score?
It's a good score. It's a great question.
What are your advice on how to review the practice exam?
Okay, so how to review practice exams. So we're getting a little practical here. So I see a couple exams or questions in the chat. Let me make sure I'm getting all of them. So we have, how much time do you recommend studying for? Okay, so how much time? The study materials, how long should you study for? Kind of the same right there.
Do you recommend like learning more content or doing more practice?
Okay, content versus practice, great questions. Any questions that you guys have? Let's put them all out right now. There's no such thing as a dumb question. For example, what does the MCAT stand for? I don't care. Like any question that you have, let's get it out.
People are asking for what best material to use.
Okay, so study materials, I got that.
Should I use the same approach on each of the sections?
Okay, interesting. Differentiated approach to the sections. So I'm going to tell you, or I'm going to give you guys, let's do another 15 seconds for questions, and then we can move on. But any questions you guys have at this moment, let's put it down. How to
What
defeat
does
cars.
the MCAT stand for?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it stands for the medical something admissions test. That's my guess. I don't know what the C stands for. Can someone help me out? Okay, cars, and then max amount of times you should take the exam.
It's the medical college admissions test.
Boom, 3 for 4. Max amount of time to take the exam. Okay, great. All right. So we have a lot of practical questions and we have a lot of like advice questions. I think the best way for me to kind of go about this is I'm going to tell you my exact experience with the exam and the kind of the congealed experience I've had with the hundreds, if not thousands of students that I've worked with to this point. And then that's going to answer a lot of the questions that you guys already have. Then after that, we're going to go back to your questions and kind of go line by line to see what we haven't answered. Okay. All right. So I think the most important question, not the most, but one of the more important questions someone brought up earlier is when you should even take the exam, right? That is crucial because you want to make sure that you're setting your, I mean, this is going to be a theme that's going to rear its head as we're talking. And that theme is you want to make sure you're setting yourself up for the best chance of success, right? There's no guarantee you're going to get a 528. Chances are you probably won't. But the goal is to set yourself up for the greatest odd of success. And so let's talk about timelines, first of all. So we got first year, we got second year, we got third year, we got fourth year. Boom, we got fall, winter, spring, and then we got summer, right? Boom, boom, boom. Okay. So for those of us, let me just hear it actually. Is anyone planning on going to medical school like I did without a gap year?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. How about folks who aren't? Are there people like that? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a mix of both. So this is I'm going to just do the one with no gap year like I did, and then you can kind of rearrange that based on your own situation. But this is on the iPad here, first year, second year, third year, fourth year, and then right after your fourth year, if you take no gap year, you start your first year of medical school, right? Usually I get some interaction, but I'm going to speed through this because the focus is the MCAT. If you have more questions about this, then feel free to ask me offline. But because so you'd start medical school here. So start in the fall, sometime in August. So this is like your white coat. And then in the spring of your fourth year, you graduate, right? Woohoo. Popping champagne bottles by the Bruin Bear. Okay. But in order to start medical school here, you have to apply here, right? You have to apply your third year of spring, which is a surprise to a lot of people because it's so far in advance. So then you do your primary, you do your secondaries, and then you do your interviews, and you get accepted, and then hopefully you start in August. Okay, great. So continue to work backwards. If you want to apply in medical school here, you have to have the MCAT, right? That's part of the application, right? And so you could take the MCAT here, or you could take it here, or you could take it here, or you could take it here, right? You can take it anytime before, right? But let's evaluate each option. And I suggest that you evaluate each option for yourself. If I took the MCAT in the winter, what are the pros and cons? Anyone, hop off the mic with me.
It's too late because if you don't like your score, you're forced to take a gap year.
Yep, I love that. Yeah, I love that. That's exactly it, right? The reason that is not a preferred option is that there's just so many, there's a good chance you don't get the score you want, and then you have to apply to medical school with poor odds, right? What's the biggest pro for that option though?
Max study time.
Right, you get a lot of time to study, great. And then kind of fall has the same sort of balance. It's a little late just because, yeah, it's like third year fall quarter, you already have classes, right? So it's a little late, but the pros, you get some more time. And I want to also mention that a lot of people don't plan this out and they end up having to take it here or here just because they didn't pre-plan. So if you're on the younger end, first, second, third year, make sure to plan when you're taking the exam to optimize your chances at success. The big problem, I think, for these two test dates are that you also have probably 16 units at school, right? And studying for the MCAT is not a part-time job. It's not like a side gig or a side hustle. It's like a very full-time thing. So I would not recommend to take it during the school year, but some people have to, and we kind of have to work around that. But if you were thinking optimally, we wouldn't do it then. Then we keep working backwards and we find this, right? This is a full 3 months of full-time studying. So I always recommend people taking it in the summer. the summer after your sophomore year, the summer after your third year. But we need to make sure that we're ready for the MCAT, right? So what's on the MCAT? It's a great question. What's on the MCAT? Let's hear it.
Biology,
Great. What else is on the MCAT?
Physics.
Physics. Okay. Does anyone know how the MCAT is broken down?
not exactly.
Okay, it's good. I'm glad I brought it up. How is the MCAT broken down? I know someone in here knows this. Do you just get 100 questions in a row? Is it true, false? Like, what is the structure of this exam?
Multiple choice.
Into
Great, it's multiple choice. How else is it structured?
to 4 sections.
Great, that's what I'm looking for. 4 sections. What are the sections? So I'm glad we're going over this because it looks like we don't quite know. And that's okay. What are the 4 sections?
Isn't it like physical sciences, biological sciences, and then like a verbal, like the cars section?
Great. So the first section you're going to get when you sit down for the exam is physics chem. And that's general chem and OChem. Your second section is going to be cars, which is the verbal section, like you just mentioned, my man. Then we got biochem is our third section. And our fourth section is psych soc. Did people know this? I'm just curious because I want to make sure that we're on the same page. Sorry?
I said, what does CARS mean?
CARS stands for critical and analytical reasoning skills. It's a verbal section where you read passages and you answer questions about those passages. And those passages are usually about things like literature or art history or sociology.
And is there like a recorder or something that you speak into?
No, you're reading a passage, right?
What do you
And
mean
that-
verbally?
It's the verbal section, as in it's not testing your bio or biochem or your physics, not like
I
a
see.
science section. It's a verbal section, as in it tests your reading comprehension.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. I'm glad we're going over these fundamentals. So you can imagine you want to make sure that these courses are finished, right? You want to make sure you finish your physics series, your general chem, your OChem, your biochem, your psych, your soc, right? And because we all go to UCLA, we have, I have the luxury of knowing exactly what classes those are for you guys. So that's physics 5 ABC, I believe. That's chem 14 ABCD. You do not need BL and CL, right? That is bio or LS 7 ABC. You do not need the genetics course. I forget the number, but you don't need that. And then psych and soc would be psych 10 and sociology 1. And it's nice to have, but it's not a must have. You can self-study for those on your own. The last thing you definitely need is biochem 153A. And these are for life scientists, and I'm sure you guys can find the corollary for physical scientists. Okay, so does that make sense? You want to go through those courses first. Then you want to figure out what time in your timeline is it best to study for the MCAT, right? And I want to be clear for everyone here. It is really important for you guys to know, oh, should I study 50% content versus 50% practice problems, or should I study 40 hours a week or 35 hours a week or 30 hours a week? But that is all after. You guys need to really understand the fundamentals of this exam first. 4 sections, about 90 minutes each, about 60 questions on each section, right? You got to understand the fundamentals first, then we can move on to the other stuff. But does this make sense now? Okay. We got 4 sections, about 90 minutes each. You're looking at an exam that's like 6 to 6.5 hours. And then there's breaks and stuff like that. And it ends up being like 7 to 8 hours. Okay. Okay, great. So my experience after I went over when to take the exam, The answer to that is look for a period of time where you can spend about 3 months full time. So, I mean, we can put that here, 3 months full time. And my definition of full time is about 40 hours a week, right? So literally like a job, okay? If you're studying part-time, like as in you have to study during the school year or something, then you can kind of just extrapolate it, right? So if you're doing, you can do 6 months part-time and then study about 20 hours a week, right? So it's, you can do the math. Okay, let's see what I want to go over next. Oh yeah, okay, so my experience. Self-studying versus taking a course. That's the next question people have, right? So I personally took the Princeton Review course. It was an in-person course. I think we met 3 days a week or every day. I keep forgetting, or every weekday. I'm not sure. It was either 3 days a week or 5 weekdays for the mornings. It was 8 through 12. Some pros, it was structured. So I had to show up every single day at the same time. That means I was studying at the same time with the same people. Other pros, I had a dedicated MCAT tutor for every subject. So they would walk us through the practice problems, the content that was a little bit difficult, and they could answer any questions that I had at that time. The cons, and they're pretty big. One, obviously it's expensive. Two, I didn't love studying every day at 8 a.m. Like at that point in my life, I wasn't quite a morning person. I am now, but at that point in my life, I would have loved to kind of start later and study from 10 to 6. But because it was a course, I had to follow their schedule. And the biggest con kind of goes along with that is that the speed of the course is based on the lowest common denominator, right? So if one person in your course has a question about stoichiometry and you know everything already about stoichiometry, everyone has to wait for that teacher to explain stoichiometry, right? That's probably the biggest con I had with courses, is that I couldn't move at my own pace. I had to move at the pace of the lowest common denominator. And imagine we have 20 people, all the students have their own questions. There were times where we were spending a lot of time on things that I already knew, and I would have liked to just have self-studied for that morning, right? That's the biggest con. Would I have done it again? Probably not, honestly. I thought that self-studying at home was more effective for me. And I didn't really need the structure because I find myself to be kind of a structured guy anyway. But if you need the structure, if you need that accountability, it's something to consider. It's not going to save you from studying on your own, and it's not going to guarantee any score. It'll be just as hard when you get at home. But I find that it's really helpful for me to share my experience with the prep courses, just so people know what they're getting themselves into. Okay. So, I mean, let's say you show up on Monday, the first 2 hours are chemistry, and then you have a little break, and then the next 2 hours are physics. Then you go home, you have some practice problems you have to do, then you kind of show up tomorrow, right? So that's kind of the flow that it's like. All right. So that's question, self-study versus MCAT prep course. Okay. So that was my experience. I studied, like I said, the summer after my sophomore year, about 3 months full time. The only other things that I was doing, I was taking Spanish 4 at my community college. That was 1 to 4 p.m. every single day. I found that pretty manageable just because Spanish was fun for me. It was a nice escape. And then I also coached youth basketball on the weekends. So I didn't really take a day off, but I did take like Saturday morning off. I took all the early afternoons off, and I found that to be a good balance for me. Okay, great. Do we have any questions at this point? I know I'm talking a lot and my throat's getting tired, so I want to make sure we're on the same page and I'm answering, or the session's kind of going the way you guys want it to.
I think somebody asked how much the prep course cost you.
I think my prep course cost me in person probably 3 big ones, so $3K. There are more expensive courses definitely on the market now, and there are cheaper courses definitely as well. But I mean, it came with the practice exams as well as the practice books. But yeah, I mean, if I were to go back, I probably wouldn't have shelled out my entire PLF salary just because I felt like I didn't really need it. But medical submissions is a stressful thing, and I understand when people kind of want to like make sure they cover their bases. But honestly, I think I might have done better without one.
And I have a question in terms of like I'm going to be studying this summer too. And I've heard like the typical studying like as if it's like a full-time job, but how are you kind of breaking up your hours throughout the day? Like how like when would you take breaks, or like how are you kind of breaking things up throughout the day?
Yeah, it's actually a really good question. And I'm really curious if I started using Google Calendar at that time. So let me think. That would have been not, it would have been like June 2017 for me, or June 2016. I'm not quite sure. Let me check. I think 2017. I want to see if I have my calendar. Let's see. Okay. So interesting. I don't have the most information, but it kind of just coincides with my story thus far. But this was kind of my schedule. We had to show up at 8. Can everyone see my screen? Yeah. So we had to show up at 8, and then it was 3 hours, I guess, not 4. Memory is kind of weird in that way. So 8 to 11. I remember I had to pick up my best friend at 7, and we would drive to Pasadena together. And then at 11 it would end. So it looks like it was every day. At 11 it would end, and I would head to Spanish, which was, I guess, 3 days a week, from 12:30 to 3:20. On these days, they also had psych and social courses in the afternoon that was online. So on Mondays, I watched my 3 hours of psych and social. It looks like Spanish. Okay, so I guess this is kind of a full week. But yeah, I would probably spend the early morning, then take a break for lunch, spend early afternoon at Spanish, do another 3 hours here. And then at nights, I would probably put in another 2 or 3 hours, and then I would call it quits around 9 or 9:30. And I would just honestly play a whole hell of a lot of League of Legends. I remember I was playing so much League of Legends during that time in my life. But yeah, that kind of adds up to around 6 to 8 hours a day. And then obviously the weekends, they're super open to coach basketball. I was there kind of all day because I wanted to watch all the games. But I also had other things to do. For those of us who are part of student organizations, you'll recognize CSC Annual. That's a funding application that you have to submit to SOL. I was also in some research at the time, so I was doing some research on the side. But essentially, within these blocks, I was in class, so that's pretty clear for you to understand. But at nights, the way I was structuring it was just the classic Pomodoro. I would put in 25 minutes and take a 5-minute break and do that for 2 hours. And after those 2 hours, I would take a 30-minute break, something like eating dinner, showering, watching a TV show or something like that. And then I would go back to some Pomodoros. So that's how I kind of structured my time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I'm kind of more insane when it comes to scheduling my time now, but I think I would do something similar. Like I'm studying for step 1 right now, and it's very important for me to be really clear about my time. So, I mean, I run in the morning, then I do a 2-hour block, then I have a 30-minute where I just stretch or read or I walk outside or I eat, another 2-hour block. I work out. We have a gym, or not a gym, but we have a barbell upstairs. So I kind of decompress, listen to podcasts, work out. And then I have a big 3-hour block here. And then I walk or meditate, call my mom, stuff like that. And then at night, I work on the business for a couple hours. I'm on Clubhouse. If you guys are on Clubhouse, I have other talks. I guess next week I have a talk with Saving Hearts. And then flex time is like for me to catch up on stuff that I kind of missed during the day. So errands, if I need to like buy stuff from Amazon or check my email, like all of that goes here. And then at night, I just have a chill time where I call my girlfriend or I read a book and do stuff like that. So obviously step 1 is a little bit more rigorous than the MCAT. So you don't need to be this strict. And I'm not this strict with my schedule today, but it's helpful for me to have these schedules. And you can see like every block, I know exactly what I'm doing. Like the most important for me thing to do every day is doing these 25 questions of AMBOSS. And I think for you guys, for the MCAT, the most important thing for you would be like maybe doing 3 CARS passages and reviewing it, right? So like make sure you not only protect your time, but you designate that time to be something very specific. Because when you get to that time, you're going to know like, oh, dude, I don't want to do any more CARS. It's like, I hate the verbal section. And so you're going to do anything else. You're going to do flashcards. You're going to do biochem. You're just going to read your MCAT textbooks, right? And so you're not actually doing the most important thing of the day at the time when you need to. So make sure you're really designating your time and making sure it has a purpose. Okay. Great. All right. So I think we answered a good amount of questions, but let's just kind of go through the Q&A right now. So the first question I got was study tips, right? This is kind of a general question. So I want to make sure that I'm hitting what you guys are actually looking for. So whoever asked the study tips, do you guys have a specific kind of follow-up with that? I want to make sure that I'm getting what you really wanted to know. Or if anyone is wondering for study tips, like what would you actually want to know?
So I actually have a question. So when you were studying, would you just study like one subject at a time? Would you study like multiple subjects in one day? Like what was your, or like when did you start taking practice exams? Like kind of what was your like material study wise? Like how did you break things up?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's two things. There's the things that I actually did and the things that I would probably do if I were to do it over again, right? So I'll tell you both. The things that I did, I started studying by going through cover to cover. I mean, not quite. I did the course, right? And the course, what they would do is they would give you like the first hour, maybe they would just do content. So stoichiometry, organic chemistry, composition reactions, things of that sort. And then the second hour, you would do just practice problems. So let's say an hour, so you could probably do one section right there. So that's 9 passages. So literally the room would be quiet and everyone would be doing 9 passages and the tutor would kind of just be sitting there, right? And then the last hour or the last hour and a half, then we would all go through maybe passages 1, 2, and 3, just because we obviously can't review all 9 of them. And I think that's a good idea. I think a lot of students make this big mistake, and it's the worst mistake anyone can make when it comes to the MCAT. They think that they need to know all the content first and then move to practice problems, as if it were step 1 and step 2, right? That's the worst mistake you can make, just because if you guys have ever seen the MCAT content books, they're massive, right? It'll take you months to go through all of that. And by the time you get to book number 2 out of 5, you've probably already forgotten half of book number 1, right? So that's and like my heart literally goes out to these people because they're working so hard. I know it's boring as hell, but they're not getting the results they want. And it's just so frustrating. So if you leave with nothing else today, you need to intertwine your content with your practice problems. And what does that look like? That can look like doing chapter 1 or just kind of reviewing chapter 1 and then doing the end of chapter 1 questions. Or it can look like doing chapter 1, which is all about stoichiometry, and then just doing 3 chemistry passages, even if they're not on stoichiometry, right? Because if you do them, you'll start to realize, okay, that problem wasn't, or that passage was all about thermodynamics. I had no idea what I was doing. Let's go study thermodynamics now, right? The biggest mindset shift I want you guys to leave with today is that those MCAT books are not textbooks. They're encyclopedias, right? They're reference points. If you need to relearn something, go to the encyclopedia and learn it. But I promise you guys, it's not a good idea to read the encyclopedia from cover to cover, right? For those of you guys that took, did people here take Chem 14A or Chem 20A, right? Do you remember how Lavelle or Sherry has a textbook? How many of you guys read that? No one.
Literally never.
It's like 100% of people who take 14A, 50% of the people maybe buy the textbook and like 0.5% read the textbook. But then 100% of people take the MCAT and all of a sudden 70% of people read the MCAT books. It's kind of a weird thing, right? So I want you to treat it like, not completely like it's Chem 14A, but definitely don't read those books cover to cover. You can have a schedule, right? You can say, okay, I'm going to go through chapters 1 through 3 today in the morning. But if you already know chapter 1 cold, just go to the questions, answer those questions, see if there's any holes in your knowledge. be comfortable with not having to read every word, because I promise you, you're going to use a lot of your energy, a lot of your effort, a lot of your focus on kind of relearning things that you already know. And you want to spend that on doing practice problems. You want to spend that on the topics that you don't know. So that's how I would spend my time if I were to do it all over again, Sophia. I would probably take like a diagnostic chem test or even a diagnostic full-length exam. And I would be happy so the MCAT has around 300 questions. I'd be happy if I got 75 questions right. That's getting 80% of it wrong, right? Because then now I can really see what I got wrong, which basically is everything, right? But more importantly, I can see what I got right. So those things I don't need to spend time on for now, at least, right? In the future, if I get a question like that again, or I like got it lucky, or I got it right just by luck, then I can review it and I can look it up then. But I think the biggest mistake people make is going cover to cover. Make sure that you're learning from day one is strategic. And that means doing the content that you struggle with. And the only way to know that is a diagnostic, and making sure that you're learning through active forms of learning. In other words, doing practice problems and reviewing those. So if I had an 8-hour day, what I would do is maybe 3 hours of contents. I mean, I think that's kind of a lot. I think 2 hours of contents, 3 hours, 2 hours of content, 2 hours of practice questions or passages, and then probably 2 or 3 hours of reviewing the stuff that you did. And then that last hour, kind of just like flex time, anything that you missed for that day. And then the next day, that content would be the stuff that I really struggled with from the day before, right? It wouldn't be just some random stuff. It would be the stuff that I struggled with. Then you can kind of continue that cycle and you'll slowly pick up everything that you need through questions. Okay. So that's my biggest study tip. And I would do that for about, let's say, I would do that for the first maybe 2 months or so. And then the last month, I would go into what I call like hardcore stamina building, right? So let me share my screen again, just so you guys see a visual aid. I know I'm talking a lot. I apologize, guys. But thank you for listening. Okay. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for responding. Okay, so let's say we have 3 months, right? Let's just get tactical. Like I helped build my girlfriend's study plan. So this is kind of fresh for me, but your most learning is going to happen in the last month when you're just doing practice exam on practice exam on practice exam, right? And so I don't know exactly how many practice exams there are today, but I do know that there's AMC full length 1, 2, I think there's 4 now. Someone kind of correct me if I'm mistaken. I think there's 4. I also know that there are a couple of AMC question packs, which are just basically a bunch of passages that you can answer. And there's other AMC resources. But basically, the first thing I would do for all of you guys is check if you are qualified for this program. It has a really funny name, but it's the Financial Assistance Program, the FAP, right? If you enroll in that, you get half off your MCAT, and then you get all of the MCAT resources, which are the most important resources because it comes from the test writer themselves. Let's just say there's 4 of these, right? I'm not sponsored or anything like that, but I'd love to be, because I really love this company. I think it's called Blueprint now, but it used to be called Next Step. They have question packs, they have like question packs of their own, question banks, I think they're called. But what I really like are their full lengths, because I remember doing full lengths 1, 2, 3, and 4 and feeling like it was really, really like the actual exam. So I recommend anyone that I work with to take the Blueprint exams. They have 1 through 10. I did up to 1 through 6. I didn't think 5 and 6 were that great. So I would recommend at least 1 through 4. And then if you're taking like a prep course or something like Princeton Review or Kaplan, they'll probably have their own full lengths. And I mean, I did like Princeton Review 1 and 2, but they had like 10 exams. I just didn't think the Princeton exams were that good. So I stopped doing them. Overall, I would kind of recommend that you guys do anywhere from 8 to 10 or maybe 8 to 12 full exams. right? Just to build stamina. It's an 8-hour exam. It's hard to really get through. Okay. So what I would do is I would kind of just put these into a calendar and schedule it. And the way that I would recommend is going by a 3-day cycle, right? So this is when you are like going into hardcore practice exam mode. So day 1, day 2, day 3. So day 1 is just do your full length. It's like a 6 to 8 hour exam. So you're going to be exhausted, right? But I need you to push a little bit harder at night and review cars, because if you go to sleep, you're going to forget all the decisions that you made on cars, just because it's like something that's very fleeting that I've noticed. So I would say do the exam, treat it like it's a real exam, then at night review cars. Second day, you review bio, or I'll just do sections 1, 3, and 4, right? And do like content review for anything that you don't know, right? So you review the other 3 sections. And if you have time, chances are you won't, because like reviewing 180 questions, it's going to take 6 to 8 hours, because you're really going in depth with every passage. You want to make sure that you got the right answers for the right reasons. You want to make sure that you picked up on the key information in the passage. You want to make sure that the wrong answers, you know why the test makers put them there. Is it a different formula that they used? Or is it a different concept that sounds related but isn't quite right? Like, for example, in Psych and Soc, there's a lot of things that are very related, but they're not quite the same, right? So making sure you review those in depth is the key to your learning. And then doing some content review. So a lot of questions you're gonna get wrong, because you didn't have the right logic. Like you went from A to B to D, but D was the wrong jump from B. And in that case, you can kind of review and be like, okay, I made that. You can write something like made the wrong assumption that B meant D, right? And put that in a Excel sheet question tracker or something, so that eventually you can see, oh, I'm making that assumption a lot. Like that's something that I should be really cognizant about. Or, oh, I'm getting a lot of questions wrong at the end because I just don't have enough time. I think I need to like speed up, right? So having that macro sense of what you're doing right and wrong is important. And if you do have time, you can start your content review. So for example, there's going to be questions that are about, kinematics, and you forgot the big 5 kinematics physics equations, right? So that is a content issue. So that means you just need to go back and review that content, right? That's different from a question you got wrong because of logic or timing or something else. That's not content, right? So I would start doing that content review that day. Chances are you probably won't do that much. So I would do some content review on my 3rd day for about 3, maybe 2 to 4 hours. And then at night, I would just kind of do miscellaneous stuff. So if I wanted to do more cars, I would do some more cars. If I wanted to do some more physics, I would do more physics, but like very targeted practice, right? That's what I did, because when I was studying, this thing wasn't around, but this thing is now around. It's UWorld. UWorld is a company that offers probably thousands of MCAT questions, and it's very, very targeted, right? If you want questions specifically on organic chemistry, you can get those, right? My girlfriend used it, and I look through UWorld a lot, and it's a really, really, really good learning tool. So if I were going back today, I would incorporate that into maybe my content phase, which is the first 2 months, right? So the content phase, which is what we talked about later with Sophia. And then there's like the test phase where you're just spamming practice exams. But I would probably try to wrap that into the content phase, the first 2 months, and get through all those questions. For the test phase, I would still kind of recommend that you follow this like 3-day cycle, just because it helps you really build stamina for the exam. And this is when you're going to learn the most. And if you have some time, I would wrap the UWorld maybe into portion or day number 3 there. So yeah, I would build out based on how many full lengths you're willing to buy, how much money you're trying to spend on these like question packs and stuff like that. I would make a schedule starting from your test date and then working backwards. And we can have that be like your test phase, and then everything else would be your content phase, and then kind of just fit everything else in that way. If you guys need help with that, then I mean, you can email me or contact me outside, and we can kind of try and build one together. Okay. All right.
Can I ask like a quick question? I mean, this
Please.
Like, in practicality, I mean, I know for myself, like I'm not planning on. I'm planning on probably studying in like the summer or something. But like even like during the quarter, like during the school year, I'm not. I won't say I'm a procrastinator, but like I let things drag a while. And I mean, like spending 3 months studying for a test. I mean, like I know it's like when you have the fear of God in you, you kind of like get it done when you need to get it done. But like,
Yeah.
how do you like? I mean, I guess my big question is like, how do I tell myself that I have to wake up at like 9 a.m. and like spend like 8 hours a day studying on when
Right.
like I see like everybody else is like off enjoying their summers, like doing something fun,
Oh,
basically.
oh yeah, it's such a good question, my man. What's your
I
name?
mean, Monvo.
Monvo. That's the question, right? That's the question. It is, how do I sit my butt down, study for this hard ass exam when I'm just not used to doing something like that, right?
Yeah.
Monvo, we were talking a lot of practicality just because, I mean, I had an hour to talk about the entire exam. There's a lot to go over, from like when to take it, how to take it, what to do here, what to do there. But dude, what you just talked about, Mambo, is that's half the equation, if not more, right? So what I would say is there's a couple of ways to kind of answer this question. Number one is like, there's like the habit formation science, right? Like literally, how do I build a habit? How do I stick to a habit? And the other half of the coin is like the motivation side, right? It's like fear of God. This means everything to my career. There's that side, right? The motivation side, I think we can talk about, but I feel like it's something that would last maybe for a day. And then when League of Legends comes out with its new patch, or there's a new Netflix or Disney Plus comes out, you want to watch that stuff, like that disappears.
Exactly.
And that was, at least that's how I found it. So let's talk about habit formation science, because that's my second passion, right? Habit formation. And I would say there's a lot of things that you can do, but the highest yield ones are, one is accountability. You want to make sure that you studying has nothing to do with your motivation. Like whether or not you study does not depend on, do I feel good today? Because I'm going to tell you, like I try to lift every day, and every single day I get to a point where like, no, I don't want to lift right now. Or, I mean, anyone who lives here and has memory of leg day, you never want to do legs. It hurts so badly. Every time you do legs, it hurts, but you still do it, right? And it's not because I'm motivated. In fact, I'm the opposite. I hate it. I would rather not do it. And so the accountability part is important because, at least for me, when I took that course, right, I paid $3,000 of my own money that I made from endless hours of PLFing. So every time I mean, I'm going to be clear. I didn't miss a single I didn't miss a single class. And it's because every time I felt like I missed a class, it was like $200 out of my own pocket. I just threw that away. Right. That's one thing.
Right.
You can have accountability through cost. So if you don't want to sign up for a course, you could have one of your buddies here, right? And say like, okay, look, if I don't study for 5 or 6 hours today, I'm giving you $50. And I'm going to be real honest to that, right? Because look, Monvel, there's going to be days where you don't want to study, but I promise you, losing $50 is worse than that. I don't know if you've ever done like sports bets or something like that.
No, I feel you.
Yeah, I hate that. Like it hurts. If you guys are more affluent and like $50 doesn't hurt, then bump it to 200. Like make it something that's really painful, right? So accountability buddies is a good thing. Another thing is just making sure that your body can handle it, right? A lot of people will maybe they'll study 5 hours today, which is great. It's really good. But the next day they'll be like, damn, I was supposed to study 8 hours. I only studied 5. So today I'm going to study 11, right? And we're like very fickle human beings. We really want to get things done, and we get this like major burst of motivation. And then we get there and we're just like, all right, well, I can't study 11 hours. It's hour number 6 and I'm pooped, right? So I think being understanding that you have 3 months, you don't have to hit every single day on the dot to get to where you need to get. And I think some people set themselves back even further by shooting themselves in the foot. So understanding that not every day is going to be perfect is a big one. Other things, the Pomodoro technique, my favorite thing in the world. I never want to study for 8 hours, but I can study for 25 minutes. That's okay, right? And if I start for 25 minutes and then I really like, I can't do it. I really can't do it. Like I'm tired. I'm thinking about anything else. Fine, I'll stop. I'll work out. I'll hang out with my family, and I'll come back when I need to, right? So I think it's like auditing kind of your schedule and your time. And I mean, I can talk about this for hours, figuring out what's taking you away from studying. Like, is it your phone? Is it Netflix? Is it your girlfriend, right? Like my girlfriend at the time was very bothersome. And it was difficult for me to study, and not bothersome in a bad way. Like we had a good time, but at the end of the day, I would have studied for like 30 minutes and be like, oh crap, like I can't do that. I'm really stressed. I'm stressed now, right? So figuring out what takes you away from studying and putting a lot of friction in between those things. So for example, I'm a big user of this, and I'm sure you guys are as well. But you know, like the TikToks, the Instagrams, the email, like I check email incessantly for some reason. Figuring out where to put your phone. I would turn off your phone. I mean, I would turn off my phone, leave it in a different room. And I think over the entire 3 months, there was never a thing that I needed to see instantly, right? There was never a text or a phone call that I needed to see instantly. And one, really good for my productivity, right? I didn't check my phone, but two, made me kind of sad that people didn't really need me, right? So it's kind of it's a funny realization, but you start to realize you don't need your phone. Another thing, if you guys like have like a younger sibling that you need to take care of, or your parents like need to get a hold of you, one thing you can do that I recently tried is you can take your phone and change it from color to grayscale, right? And now every time that I did that, every TikTok that I watch is so boring because it's all gray. So I don't want to do it anymore, right? So there's obviously a lot of things. I just gave you kind of rapid fire tips and tricks, but the most important thing is auditing. I have 16 hours in my day, assuming that I sleep 8 hours. And I know a lot of you guys do not sleep 8 hours. But of that 16 hours, I only need to study 8. If I study 8, that's a killer ass day. That's a perfect day, right? So why the hell am I not being like, why the hell can I not do that, right? Is it because I'm on my phone for too long? Is it because my girlfriend wants to hike every single day? Is it because my family needs me? Or is it because stuff like you're watching a bunch of YouTube videos that you don't really care about? Or is it because you really don't want to do cars, and so you make up some reason to go to the store and buy chips or something like that? Like, you guys know where your time goes. You know, I promise you. I know it's a shock that you have 16 hours every single day, and you had that like one thing that was like half an hour on your to-do list and you didn't do it. You know why, right? And so figuring out how to put friction and other kind of tools of habit formation in that mix and that ecosystem is going to help you. I would recommend the book Atomic Habits by James Clear to everyone here. It's a book that New York Times bestseller for probably months on end now. And this guy's entire life has studied habit formation. And I put a lot of his kind of learnings in my own life. And it's very, very easy to see the difference, right? So Monville, that was the question. And obviously I can't give you a full answer, but hopefully that helps a little bit.
I mean, it definitely does. Because I know, like, even for like school, it's like hard to like sometimes you have your days when you're like 8 hours, like you do your thing right before like your midterm exam or something, but like
Right.
the week leading up to it, like you won't do anything because like you know there's always time to something. So like I guess
Right.
even like my friends who I've seen that are older than me and like have taken the MCAT or like have studied for it, this is like the biggest problem they have. And like
Yeah.
it's good like getting like different people's take on it. And like the money thing I really like putting
Yeah.
like doing the classes is like a good way to like, because like you're paying for it, so like why waste your time? But like
Right.
having a friend and then like paying them is like that's something
Yeah.
I'll try in the future.
Yeah. Look, Monvo, like this isn't specific to the MCAT. this is specific to your entire life, right?
Right.
Like, do I want to get swole and lose weight? Do I want to make sure that my relationship is healthy and happy? Do I want to make sure the time that I spend with my family is full and fulfilling? All of them struggle from the same thing. I don't have enough time. I don't know how to do it, right? It's all about motive. It's all about putting the time that you have into the things that you want to put it to. That's the biggest problem of humanity. We put our time in like time sinks when we really realize that there are other things that we care about, but yet we are not putting time into those things, right? So there's kind of ways that you have to understand human psychology, and money and loss aversion is one of those things too. So yeah, Monvel, I think that's one half of the equation. I think reading through James Clear's book would give you a little bit more tactical advice on how to really make those things happen. But yeah, I mean, that's the problem we all live with, right? I want to have a six pack too, but I love freaking milk tea. I love milk tea. I wish that I was sponsored by freaking Coco's, because I spend all my money at Coco's. You know.
Same.
If there's enough time, is it right if I ask another question?
Yeah. So Sophia, I'm free indefinitely. I don't know when you need to head off, but I know the MCAT is important for people. So I want to make sure that everyone kind of leaves here with all their questions answered. So I'll stay until everyone's kind of settled. If you need to go, I know that's okay as well. But you can find me on a couple of platforms, but probably that's the easiest thing. You can just go to my website, and that has all the information on how to contact me, as well as other resources, including for stuff on the MCAT that I have kind of like a dedicated resource bank for. So check that out if you have some time. And then the other thing is, what's the other thing that I like to share with people? Oh yeah. And the MCAT is only one piece of the puzzle. Another thing that I would suggest everyone do is get a sense of where their whole application for medical school looks like. That second link is a quiz that I kind of like developed with some of the resources online. It'll give you a sense of what your application looks like right now, what you need to do to improve it, and then some resources to kind of attack your weak spots. So those are the two things I would recommend for everyone if you guys need to go. But that's how to kind of contact me if you have any other further questions. Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
we're still
No
okay
worries.
on time. I can stay here. So Tenny, if you want to ask your question, I don't mind.
Let's do it, Tenny.
Yes. I was just gonna say, this might sound like a little crazy, but like if
No.
I was like, is 9 to 5 like enough? I feel like maybe I'm like I would need more time, or maybe like I'm just not as fast as a learner. Like, is that enough time really? Like
Enough time for what?
to like study for the MCAT in a day, like 5 days out of the week, even though it's still 40 hours?
Yeah. So this is the amazing thing, right? Whenever I say you need to study 8 hours a day, do some of you guys hear that and be like, oh God, that's like too much? Or does everyone here say like, oh God, that's so little?
Like I
Not
think
enough.
both. Like
Yeah. I think there's both camps, right, Tenny? So I think it's interesting. This is the point I'm not like shaming you or anything. I think it's very interesting because half of us will say, holy 8 hours every single day. What do I even do for 8 hours a day? Like what, other than sleep, do you guys do anything for 8 hours a day? Let me think. I maybe listen to music on the side 8 hours a day. I'm not walking, not in school. I'm not studying for 8 hours a day. Jeremy's eating for 8 hours a day. That's kind of a lot. But I like it, Jeremy. But yeah, Tenny, it sounds like a little sometimes, but 8 hours is a long time to be doing something straight through. I don't know if you guys have ever had a full-time job, but imagine being on the full time 9 to 5. I would say, of course, everyone has their differences. You might need 10 hours a day. Other people might be 6. But I would say 8 hours is a good starting point, right? 9 to 5, have a hard stop at 5. And then you can kind of have the rest of your evening to yourself and then get up and do it again tomorrow, because, you don't really start right when you wake up. And then you're also not going to be able to study straight 9 to 5. So that probably looks like 9 to 7 with a half an hour lunch break, a lot of 10-minute breaks to kind of just chill and like eat and like hydrate. So Tenny, it ends up being like a 9 to 7 anyway. And if you need more, then it's like a 9 to 9, right?
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question. But I think the most important thing is regardless of how many hours you study, obviously there's a minimum. I think people should be studying like 6 hours a day at least. Regardless of that, you want to make sure that you're optimizing the study hours, right? You want to make sure that you're studying in active ways. There's a Skillshare course that I recommend for everyone. It's free by Ali Abdal. And that really teaches you the fundamentals of studying effectively, because you want to make sure that the 1,000 hours that you're going to put into this exam, every single hour is as effective as it's going to be. And you're not kind of like sitting at home highlighting things for a couple hundred hours, right? So that's what I would say.
Awesome. Thank you.
Perfect.
I have a couple questions too.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I know this may sound weird, but has anyone ever taken the MCAT without finishing the physics series?
Has anyone ever taken? Yeah, I mean, in the span of life, yeah, I'm sure people have taken the MCAT without
Like-
finishing the physics series.
Maybe someone you know, or if it's like advised against.
Yeah, I would say it's advised against, just because it's important to kind of be exposed to the concepts. You don't really want to be learning them for the first time. But I get that. I get the sense that you're asking this question because it's applicable to you and you have kind of a unique situation. So why don't we get specific here? What course will you not have finished?
Well, that's the thing. I'm not sure if I want to take a gap year or not. If I do take a gap year, it'll be fine because it's winter quarter of my second year. So
Right.
if I were to start physics next quarter, 5A, I would have to finish probably next winter with 5C.
Right. So let me look at what 5B is, because it was different from, I mean, I took physics abroad. So 5B is thermodynamics, fluids, waves, lights, and optics. Okay, yeah, that stuff is pretty important. And then physics 5C, electricity, magnetism, and modern physics. Less important, but definitely still going to be on the exam. Did you take AP physics and not AP? Did you take physics in high school?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, then I think you might. I think if I were you, I would take a physics diagnostic and see if you feel like the concepts, or I would just flip through a physics book. The physics book is one of the shorter books because there's only maybe 10% of the exam is actually physics. So look through the physics book, see if you know a majority of the concepts. Not know, but you have the capability of relearning or relearning the concepts. And if you feel comfortable with it, then go ahead. Obviously, it's not optimal, but I would say that's probably the best way to get your answer as to whether or not it would be a comfortable thing for you to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then
you can take them all in the summer, like Jeremy said. Sorry, I cut you off there, but but again, you don't want to be taking physics hardcore all summer and studying for the MCAT, right? Because you have to battle getting A's in physics, which is a core prerequisite for medical school, and also studying for the MCAT, which makes things a little bit more difficult, as opposed to what I did, which is like study Spanish 4, right? Important, but not as important as physics.
Mm-hmm. And then this might, I don't know, you don't have to answer this. I know, like, but what did you get on the MCAT, if you don't mind telling us? I don't want to compare or anything, but just wanted to have an idea.
Yeah, it's a great question. In fact, you can find my score on the internet, like on my website, but I want to come back at you. Why do you need to know my score? Because I have already put it out there. I'm just very curious as to why you want to know my score.
I'm just curious. I feel like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone just is curious.
I've gone to a lot of MCAT workshops, and the first thing a lot of people start with is their MCAT score. They'll be like, "Oh, my name's Steve. I got a 521." right? And I've always found that to be very detrimental to folks because people are like, 521, I can never get that. Like, that's so high. Like, Steve's out here gloating, right? And so that's why I don't open with it and I don't usually tell people. But why don't I'm very curious now. If I said I had a 526, how would you feel?
I don't know. I feel like
If I said I have a 510, how would you feel?
well, as far as I know, like 510 and 515 are usually around the range that people actually get into med school. So I'm thinking like I'm aiming towards that. But yeah, of course there are people who, might get a better score, and I don't see that as something that's detrimental, but it's just something to like, I don't know, I guess find out to see maybe like how they got there, what steps they took. Again, I'm not like shooting for a perfect score, but yeah, just curious.
Yeah. I mean, I think then we've kind of figured out your real question, because regardless of the score that I got, what you're really wondering is like how I got that score, right? And so, I mean, we've kind of talked about it over the last hour, but yeah, I mean, I'm happy to tell you guys my score. I got a 519, which is the top 3%. It's in the 97th percentile of schools. The average matriculants MCAT currently is 512.5, which is around 80%, I think. So that's the top 20 percentile of MCAT scores. But yeah, I feel like the number itself doesn't really help people. But if you'd like to know, yeah, I'm not shy. I'm quite proud of my score.
Yeah, like I personally was very curious too, because I didn't check online what you got because I didn't know it was there, but just kind of hearing what a person scores and seeing how they work to get to that score gives me a little bit more confidence as to like using the same tactics that that person used. So that's usually why I'm curious.
Yeah. And I think personally, I think it's a dangerous thing, truthfully, because there are people in my class that got 528. Like there's a person in my class that I know they got a perfect score. And I am confident that the way he studied, it just would not have worked for me, right? Like he put in way more hours. He was way more meticulous with things. And it just wasn't practical for someone at my stage in my life, right? So I would suggest being careful about obviously who you listen to, right? Just because someone got a 528 doesn't mean they're a great teacher. Just because someone got a 505 doesn't mean they don't know what they're talking about, right? You guys know this because there are professors that you've taken courses from. These guys are top of the game at organic chemistry, physics, general chemistry, but they're so bad at teaching. Like they forgot what it's like to not know any physics. And so when they teach physics, you're like, what is going on? How are you the best physicist in the world? And you can't teach me physics. As opposed to even someone like me. I don't have a physics degree, but I would venture to say that I could probably teach physics just as well or better than some of the poorer physics professors here at UCLA, right? So I would just say be careful of that because it's dangerous. I think there's a lot of people on the internet who sell a lot of things. There's a lot of people on the internet who put a lot of like random tips and tricks out, and their only real selling point is that they have a 528 or a 525 or a 520. And a lot of people fall into study habits and techniques that don't really work for them, right? They completely change the way they study just because another person got another score. But yeah, again, I'm happy to tell my score. I'm happy to share what worked for me, but I want everyone to really make sure that even if you don't agree with the 3-day cycle that I proposed earlier, that you try it and see if it works for you, right? Even if you don't think you should, even if you think you should do textbook first all the way through and then practice problems and then practice exams, try it and see if it works for you, right? But I'm telling you what I think is best from the thousands of students that I've worked with. And it's not at all relevant to the score that I got. Not at all. So I want to make that clear. It's a good question.
Hey, Michael. Thank you for.
Hey.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. Good to see you.
thank you for taking your time and spending with us today. I actually have a few questions for you.
Please.
What is the strongest factor on your application, and what are your tips to prepare for that?
On my application or on this exam?
On the application in general.
I mean, the application is holistic, right? So there's, I would say every single part of the application matters. There's 6 buckets. And if you guys, again, make sure to take the quiz, but the quiz kind of walks you through the buckets that are on your actual application, right? The 6 major buckets are your GPA, your MCAT, your letters of recommendation, the school list, like the schools you're actually applying to, your extracurriculars, and your personal statement, right? So optimizing, taking a look at each of these 6 and seeing where you can get a little bit better on each of them, that's how you optimize your application, right? And if you haven't taken the MCAT, you can just guess, right? I know none of us has taken the MCAT, or you can do the quiz multiple times and see if that kind of changes, right? So Jane, I would say that the overall application of mine, like I thought it was pretty strong across the board. GPA and MCAT were on the like high 99 percentile end. My extracurriculars were okay. They were strong. They weren't really average or weak, I would say, but they weren't really outstanding. So I would say my GPA and MCAT were my strongest points, but it's important for all of it to be strong. And tips for kind of optimizing your application is to really put everything on the board, like put everything on a piece of paper and be like, okay, my GPA is 3.7. Okay. If I spend another year and I just get all A's, let me do the math. Okay. My GPA is now 3.77. Okay. Does that make a big difference? Okay. Yeah, I think it makes a little bit of difference. So I should probably focus on that. But if your GPA is, I don't know, let's say it's like 3.85, and then realistically you do all the math for the rest of your time at UCLA, and you're like, it becomes 3.88. It's not really a big jump. So I should probably spend more time focusing on my extracurriculars, right? So making that kind of judgment at every part of the bucket, or at every bucket of the application, is how you can optimize your application. Same with the MCAT. If you're thinking about a retake and your scores are, I don't know, let's say like 127 all the way across the board, right? That's a 508. Okay. Then you can look at your practice exams and be like, damn, I got 127 all across the board. Usually I get 129 on biochem, and then usually I get 130 on psych soc. Like I had a bad day. So if I bump my score from 508 to 513, how does that change my application, right? And then kind of doing the math there. And if you guys are wondering about how your grades and your MCAT, your GPA and your MCAT change your admissions odds, you can look at this file. The AAMC gives it, it's public if you just Google it. So like, look, if my GPA is greater than 3.8 and I have a 506, then my odds at admission are like 60%. Okay, great. Okay, so if I wanted to jump to 80%, what would I have to do? I have to get to 514. Okay, so that's 8-point difference. Do I think I can get a 2-point spread on each group or on each section? Okay, well, I think I can. So maybe I should retake it, because that gives me like a 20% boost in admissions, right? Obviously, it's all really rough math, but really doing and getting granular and getting in the weeds there, that's important. And of course, you can do the same with extracurriculars as well.
Thank you for that. Also, I have a questions about personal statement. How did you, how did you start to like brainstorming? How was that process go for you?
Yeah, so I have something that I wrote for, okay, so disclaimer, I have a program that I sell, right? I don't know if any of you guys recognize me, but I worked for an admissions company last year, and the company was Shamasian Academic Consulting. You may have seen Dr. Shamasian speak last year. He's great. The thing is, like, I didn't fully feel like I fit with his mission, just because a lot of his student body were people who were extremely wealthy and kind of could afford his services, which were, $8,000 plus, right? I came from AAP and PLF, so I wanted to make sure that my advising was accessible to people who couldn't pay thousands of dollars, right? So I have this other program, and it's called the Premium Advising Program. And I made sure that the only promise I would have is that it would be as good as it could be. And it was cheaper than Netflix. So right now I think it's at $13 or something like that. And in that community, there's a Slack group, and you can ask any question, and I answer it within 24 hours, right? And so I'm gonna leave one answer that I put in the Slack community answering that exact question, just so, you can kind of see what we kind of do in that community, as well as answer the question for you. So I think, all right, so that doesn't copy and paste very well, but why don't I just show you guys then, and you guys can screenshot it if you'd like, or something like that. So I'm having some trouble copying and pasting it, but here it is, right? Obviously, it's going to be a really long answer, Jane. So why don't you just screenshot this part and then read through it. And if you have any other questions, then you can kind of contact me. Okay?
Okay, that sounds good.
All right. People
can
have this
I have
screenshotted. There's a second part. Hold up.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to move on, guys. Here's the second part. Let's do this. Okay, there's that. So this is like literally my long ass answer about how to start your personal statement, how to brainstorm through it. Okay, and then that's the last part.
And
Boom.
you said that
All
this
right, guys.
you said that this is a program or like a community that you sell?
Yeah, it's a
how
membership
do-
community. You can find all. Yeah, you can just find information on my website. It's pretty clear. You'll see it. It's called the Premium Advising Community. It has that Slack group. We do office hours every week, just like this one. Obviously, just the group is a little bit smaller, and we know each other a little bit more. And then there's also a couple of other resources that I have in there, including including 3 full medical school applications. I just show you the medical school application, and then I walk you through what was good and bad about each application. There's my application there. There's my friend Ben's application, who didn't get in anywhere in 2019, but then we fixed up his application. He got in somewhere in 2020, got to multiple places 2020, actually. And then there's my friend who got a full ride at UCLA, also in there, but that's the website. Okay, so hopefully it's affordable. I try to do that as best as I could. All right, what's up, Jen?
And then I have a last questions about the interview.
Sure.
Because the process moved a little bit quick. So
Sure.
how would you recommend to prepare for the interview?
Yeah, quickly, just because I want to focus on the MCAT for these folks, but it's there's 3 types of interviews: traditional interviews, MMIs, and then there's kind of like this new video interview that they're doing nowadays. And I would say just practice, right? Practice, practice, practice. I would say that there's nothing on the traditional interview that they can ask you that would be a surprise. It'd be like, tell me about yourself. What are your greatest strengths? What are your greatest weaknesses? Tell me why you want to go into medicine, things like that. So practicing that with a stranger, practicing that with me, practicing that with your family, someone to really keep you accountable and be like, that's a pretty bad answer. Like, honestly, you're kind of like rambling there. You should stop, stuff like that. Someone to really tell you what you're doing well and poorly. Recording yourself so you can watch yourself back, I think, is a good idea. The MMIs, you can buy a book that I thought was really useful. It's Samir Desai's book called The Guide to the MMI. It's a brown book for $15. Read through that. He has a bunch of exercises, and that'll get you through the interview process. And the last thing is a mindset thing. Just know that they need you as much as you need them. They're really looking for students who fit their mission and are going to be good, great physicians that represent their school. Like, they want to be proud that I came from UCLA. So remember that, and don't be an imposter when you're in the setting. It helps with not feeling like an imposter when you're interviewing with someone, just because you can recognize that both parties have something to lose. Like, you're awesome. That's why they interviewed you. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Also, can you drop the name of the book in the chat?
Yeah, Samir Desai. I think he only has one book, but you can find it. You guys are smart Googlers.
Hi, Michael.
Hey.
So quick question about the physics abroad. So
Yeah.
second year, it's winter quarter, as you know, and it looks like if I'd want to, let's say, assuming I'm taking a gap year, right? So I'd have to do physics abroad in my third year just because of how the application deadlines are.
Yep,
Would it be
I remember
worth
that.
it taking it in my third year, like physics abroad? Then how would I fit the MCAT in there?
Yeah, it's tough. So if you take a gap year, just going to do some quick maths. Take a gap year, that means you're applying June of your senior year, which is when you also graduate, right?
Yes.
If you are kind of bound to physics abroad, I loved it, man. I did it the summer after my freshman year. It was great for me to get out of Southern California. I've lived within 50 miles all of my life. Like literally, my dad was born in Glendale. Yeah, my dad was born in Glendale. Yeah, woo, Glendale. Like, actually, I think this is so funny because I'm a quick digression. But when my dad was growing up, I remember there's one question I asked him because I grew up in Chinatown where there's a lot of races, Hispanics, African Americans, Caucasians, and Asian people, Chinese, Vietnamese like myself. And I remember asking him like, Dad, like, do you have a favorite race? And then my dad was like, yeah, like I love Armenian people. And I was like, Armenian people? I've never met an Armenian person. And then that's when I learned, oh, he grew up in Glendale, went to Glendale Community College. So it's sick. And that's like, I always have a soft spot for that. But anyway, back to your question, Darren. Back to your question. Yeah. So lived in SoCal all my life. Going to Scotland was a good change of pace for me. Fell in love, I did the whole freaking 9 yards in Scotland. I thought the physics teaching was great and experientially it was great. But I think you're in a different situation because you're going to have to decide, right? Because if you're going to take a gap year, that summer is probably the best time for you to take the MCAT.
Yeah.
The first question I can answer is, do I think you can do both at the same time? I think the answer to that is no. Physics abroad is really, really fast paced, especially because it's 3 courses in 8 weeks. So I think you're gonna have to make a tough call, Darren. Is it Darren or Duran?
Darren.
Darren, yeah. I think you're gonna have to make a tough call. If I were you, I would try to take physics not abroad. And if you're still kind of stuck to the magic of being abroad, which I mean, I understand, I loved being abroad. I would say try and look for a scenario where you can take something else abroad. It doesn't have to be physics, right? It can be a GE, like a series of GEs. It can be Spanish, right? So being a little bit more flexible if the reason you want to study abroad is to be abroad, right? So like, I mean, let me ask, why do you want to study physics abroad?
I heard that it's much more fun than just simply studying it here. I mean, if I get to be in another country, I might as well, and then knock the physics out of the way. But if it's not physics, I'd be happy with doing Spanish as well, just like a change of pace, like you said. So
yeah, I mean, you and I feel the exact same way. You and I feel the exact same way. So if I were you, I would look to see if there's other courses that kind of make sense. Maybe a fall abroad, a winter abroad that makes sense in my senior year, right? That'd be so sick. I finished my MCAT, I killed it, and then I'm like abroad in Spain for fall quarter. That's sick. But practically speaking, if I were you, I wouldn't take physics abroad junior year, just because, damn, then like my MCAT is senior year, and I've already taken biochem, and chemistry and OChem, and it's been years, right? So I would probably do that if I were you.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely considering going to a different country now, I guess.
Yeah.
So what about second year summer, like this coming summer? Would that be practical, considering I haven't had physics done yet?
Taking the MCAT?
Yeah, so I could do everything, I guess. But
yeah, it's going to be up to your comfort level. If I were you, I mean, have you taken physics before?
I mean, I've taken the AP series, but it might be different.
So the AP series is a lot like physics in university. They're pretty similar. So if you felt comfortable with AP Physics, you liked it, you feel like you could kind of relearn it, I would say then try it, right? Make a plan to take it at the end of this summer, and then start your studying with physics. See, like you do a physics book and you're like, holy crap, like I am lost, completely lost. Or you take a full diagnostic exam and you get 60% on every single subject, and then on physics you get 0, right? Then it's like, okay, maybe I should kind of change course. But yeah, I would open both doors. I would open the MCAT door this summer and also open like clinical research, other shadowing and volunteering, just like other things that you wouldn't be doing if you weren't studying for the MCAT. And then if you're 1 or 2 weeks in and you realize, all right, yeah, this is not happening, then decommit and pivot. But if you are 2 or 3 weeks in, you're like, oh, wow, I actually don't need physics. Like I'm solid. Then go straight through. You know what I mean? And commit.
Okay. I'm thinking like, aside from not being able to take some summer courses, it might be worth like trying the summer like second year MCAT and then retaking it. Would it be like a big hit if I had to retake the MCAT? What do you suggest? Is it better to just do it all in one go?
Yeah. Like most things with medical school admissions, plan to do it once. You only want to do it twice if something goes terribly wrong, if your strategy is wrong, if something happens in your life. Same with applying to medical school. You really only want to do it once, just because, I mean, freaking Monville mentioned it earlier, but dude, it's 3 months full time. It like drains your soul. Honestly, like my girlfriend at the time, we had a really rocky relationship because it was just hard for me to get through all of that and maintain a relationship. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't plan for it, but if you need to, you need to. Okay.
I guess I could always go to Ireland sometime later.
Yeah. I think you can. And Spanish abroad, I think, is even more enjoyable just because you don't feel like you need an A or anything like that. So look at your options, I would say. Look at your options.
Okay. I'll definitely consider it. Thank you so much.
So I'm being called for dinner. I don't know. Does anybody else have any like last questions they want to ask? On your website, Michael, you have a link or an area where people can ask you questions, right?
Yeah, you guys. So there's a new change on my website. There's a Calendly link where I'm taking one-on-one consultations. I've closed that for the time being just to prepare for step 1. Because I mean, I have 2 programs. One is like where I work with you one-on-one on anything that you need. And then there's the premium advising community that's like more affordable for folks. So I'm closing down my one-on-one advising just because I'm getting to a point where I need to bunker down for step 1. I'm still taking 2 more students. That's what I said I would do in other meetings. So if you're interested and you in like a one-on-one thing, then you can email me there with your interest, your CV, and what you're kind of looking to get out of it. Very quick disclaimer. When I work with you one-on-one, like it's very involved. We talk every single week through email. We get on the phone every month just because I want to make sure that your odds at admission are as high as it can be. And because it's so involved, it's way more pricey than a lot of other things, right? It's pricey. It's going to be, it starts at $3,000 a year, right? If you need a more affordable option, the other option is there. Again, I'm just going to put that in the link. But if you just want to ask questions that I didn't get to, I have a type form survey there. I check that every week and I answer it every week via email. So you can put your questions there, but chances are, I mean, I have probably like 50 plus some questions to kind of get to. So it'll probably be a couple months down the line before I can kind of answer that, but I will eventually get there if you have that question. The faster ways to do it are just to email me directly or join the premium advising community, and we can just answer things every single week. Okay. Or I mean, every day on Slack too.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I have a quick question just before we leave, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Jeremy, no worries. Give me 1 second. Sophia, you can feel free to head out. You can just give me host and then I can end it when everyone's done and you can just head off to dinner.
Okay. do I end the recording now or do you have control over that?
Even if it ends right now, it's okay. But
Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording now and then I'll definitely send that to you